So, you probably read that the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, Prince Harry and Princess Meghan, they seem to have abandoned the kingdom of Britain. They are going with Plan B instead. It was a shock announcement. Harry and Meghan are going to step back from their role as royals. Quote, "After many months of reflection and internal discussions, we have chosen to make it a transition year," the couple said in a post on Instagram, which is how you announce things these days. They are going with their own private Plan B. Plan B, however, is bound to be a bit of a disappointment for Harry and Meghan, at least according to an article that I read in the Beaverton. The article's headline is this: "Toronto's expensive housing market forces Harry and Meghan to consider living in Barrie." Really? It's up there on your screen. Well, according to this article, Harry and Meghan said that they would really have liked to have found a two-bedroom condo in Toronto, but as private citizens, quote, "seeking financial independence, they cannot afford Windsor Castle-like mortgage payments that a Toronto condo would cost them." So palace officials are suggesting that Barrie might be a much better match for the Duke and Duchess. I mean, housing prices are climbing in Barrie too, but they are still cheaper than they are in Toronto. So the once royal couple could settle down in a nice, quiet neighborhood. They could raise their family and spend, well, never more than 3 hours a day commuting to and from the Suits set in Toronto. Barrie will be a nice private place to raise Archie. Since few of their Toronto friends will risk a rush hour or a whiteout blizzard or a cottage traffic jam to visit them. Very private in Barrie. Plan B. Surprising and unexpected. After they quit the kingdom, Harry and Meghan will move to Barrie. Now, unlike Harry and Meghan, Jesus' disciples did not actually volunteer to give up on the royal kingdom. On their last day with Jesus, before he ascended bodily into heaven, which is another sermon for another time, the disciples are said to have asked Jesus, "Lord, is this the time when you will restore the kingdom to Israel?" I mean, the disciples wanted the kingdom of Israel to be great again. They wanted a Jewish kingdom that was more expansive than the kingdom of King David or King Solomon. They wanted a kingdom mightier than Rome. The disciples, they wanted a cozy stay-at-home kingdom, the better to get rid of those foreign mercenaries that were forced to lodge in their homes. They wanted a kingdom that was safer and happier and wealthier than the Holy Roman Empire of 1,000 years later would ever be. The disciples, they wanted Jesus to sit on the throne. And they wanted to sit on Jesus' left hand and on Jesus' right hand. The disciples wanted to be trusted advisors, cabinet members. The disciples wanted to be ambassadors and rulers in waiting. And well, the disciples, if truth be told, they also wanted to be kingdom celebrities instead of just plain fisher folk and peasants. And the truth is that the disciples had given up everything they had, everything to follow Jesus, up and down Judea, from Galilee to Jerusalem, back and forth, probably for years. The disciples did this. They gave up everything in the hope of getting a piece of kingdom action in Jesus' new regime. So they asked Jesus, Lord, is this finally the time when you will restore the kingdom to Israel? Please? No, says Jesus, more or less. Not now, if ever. And then, so Luke tells us he was told by his historical sources because he didn't see it himself, but then Jesus ascended into heaven after promising the disciples the Holy Spirit. And instead of a resurgent Jewish kingdom, the Holy Spirit eventually nudged the disciples to invent the church. Plan B. And that's how it is that the arrival of the church after Jesus left was a complete surprise to just about everyone who didn't fly away that day. No one saw the church coming. Jesus' first followers, they expected one thing, a powerful Jewish military and political renaissance. That's what they expected, but they got a measly plan B instead, the church. And in the 2,000 years since, if we're honest, as plan B, the church has often disappointed us. I mean, it's true that the church has had its moments. The church, after Jesus left, grew and grew until it filled the whole earth, in large measure because people who belonged to the church, they lived a lovely and radical alternative to the kingdom's status quo approach of me-firstism and loneliness, and especially perhaps violence and poverty. The church tried to signal in its life on the bended knee that we just heard from the anthem. The church tried to signal a time when knowledge, hand in hand with peace, would walk the earth. And they tried to live that within their own body together. Yeah, but by the time the Roman Empire under Constantine took over the church, basically occupied the church was already failing as plan B. It's been a disappointment. Since then, the church has grabbed headlines mostly for conquest and inquisition, crusades and pogroms, sex scandals, family compacts that wanted to rule everything, residential school. And now the headlines about the church are all about its decline, actually. Plan B. The church has too often treated its members, that's us, the church has too often treated us as if we were accused prisoners sitting in a witness box, and the church has treated us as if our lives are a time of trial lived in the expectation of some sort of eternal verdict. In, out, in, out. In fact, for all the good points brought up by our morning anthem, it itself promises us a judgment day when all the wrongs shall be revealed. Watch it. You know, we have to be kept in line by these threats. The church has too often treated spirituality like it was economics, the dismal science, an opportunity to invest time and energy merely in exchange for a heavenly reward. The church has too often treated truth as something you can pour out of books into the heads of people rather than as something you do in love. Plan B. Totally shocked the disciples. Plan B, the church. We have from the beginning been a makeshift, imperfect, very suburb-like second best compared to what most people dream for on earth. So now what? I have just two thoughts. First, I think we actually need to trust Jesus on this, or God, but we need to embrace the plan B-ness of the church. That means, like the disciples, we will just have to take a chance and make it up as we go. We must recognize that the church was never meant to be the main thing. It came as a complete surprise to Jesus' followers. Church has always been merely provisional, a stopgap measure, like a tent set up at an Algonquin campground. That's the church. Or like a cup of sugar borrowed, soon gone. So perhaps the church will someday become a thing of the past because we don't need it anymore, because humans will have finally figured it out and they don't need the crutch anymore. Or maybe because God himself or herself, maybe God will nudge us in a different direction, just like God nudged the disciples to invent the stopgap measure called the church. The church is just plan B. I think it's important for us to remember that here, because sometimes at Lawrence Park Community Church, we worry about the future. As if the worst possible outcome would be that our congregation ages more, or declines more, or the numbers go down more. And I mean, let's be honest, the truth is that these worries are justified. And the truth about all churches is that they do not last forever. Again, the whole notion of church came as a surprise to the disciples, and it's provisional. Congregations, even those 150 years old, rather than, a non-elderly 75, congregations will come and go. Plan B has always been stopgap. Now, this is not an invitation on my part for us to be reckless or to not care about the future, because I don't want to be reckless and I do care about the future. And I love this community. I love the kindness. I love the music. I love the ways in which you inspire me. I love the good things we do here at Lawrence Park to bless each other and to try to bless the city and even the world beyond. I love all that. I don't want it to go away. But there is this question of focus. Our aim is not first to enjoy this place and its comforts, or to put more bums in seats as if that was an end in itself. Our purpose is not to have an ever greater surplus, as much as we like and hope for those things. No, and here's the second thing I want to say about the church being plan B. Our core aim ought really always to be on plan A. Plan A is what ought to grip us and excite us and worry us. It ought to take up our time and effort. Plan A ought to make us sit on the edge of our seats. Plan A ought to get us up out of bed in the morning, eager and excited and ready to go. Plan A. Oh, what is plan A? Well, we have no other duty now that Jesus has left us and we are all alone on some hillside or in some city. We have no other duty than to embrace the memory of Jesus. As we will, imperfectly perhaps, because I always have my theological scruples, but as we will, for example, when we sing the song Mary Did You Know, which is coming after the offertory, We have no other duty than to embrace the memory of Jesus and Jesus' priorities, in order to let those memories serve as our inspiration for the 6 days of the week that we don't come to church, and instead the 6 days when we raise families and go to work and enjoy our leisure or volunteer or whatever it is we do. Plan A is to remember Jesus and be inspired in all the things we do by Jesus. The kingdom of Israel isn't ever going to come the way that the disciples hoped it would. But maybe, if we can remember Jesus and be inspired by Jesus, maybe one day peace on earth and shalom for creation will make the need for plan Bs a thing of the past. Plan A, after 2,000 years, to remember Jesus and be inspired by Jesus, not just for 75 years more, but until we have done our part too to make all things new. Amen.